Bridgewood Church is a place where a perfect God meets imperfect people. That means no matter where you're at in life, everyone is welcome here. This is a place where we experience God every time we gather together. A place where we discover community at every stage of life, from kids to adults from all walks of life and in every step of the journey. This is a place where we unpack and engage our God-given purpose. A place where generosity reigns as we live to serve and give back to our generous God, our community, and our world. Because ultimately, we believe that we owe everything to the God who made us and saved us, which is what we're here to do today. So we invite you to join us as we reflect on who God is and respond to all He's done for us, today at Bridgewood.
You just heard all about the heart behind the Immersed Bible Reading Experience. Now all you got to do is get the book and get yourself into a group. You can order your own hard copy of Immersed Messiah at the info kiosk for just $12 now and get into an Immersed Life group or any other life group for that matter on the Bridgewood app or website, where you'll also be able to access the weekly video previews, audio version of Immersed, and more. So do it today before groups kick off next week. And that's not the only thing we've got launching next week. While we're all about connecting in groups here at Bridgewood, the primary way we learn is in steps through all the different growth classes available to us. Starting Point, Roots 101, and a brand new class called Why I Believe are now open for registration. All three take place on the Bridgewood campus on Wednesday nights. Space is still available, but sign up on the Bridgewood app or website now to secure your spot in one of these three incredible classes. And we all know what's coming up next week. One of my favorite days of the year, Super Bowl Sunday. We're going to rally and have some fun as a church, repping our favorite teams with whatever jerseys or apparel we've got, giving away some free pizza and Chick-fil-A. That's right, free pizza and some Chick-fil-A, baby. And on top of all that, you're going to hear a message from yours truly. I can't wait to share with you next week. So grab some friends, your favorite team apparel, and get ready for Super Sunday here at Bridgewood. Now, let's get ready to welcome Pastor Kurt to the stage in just a minute for the final installment of our January series, All That Matters.
Welcome to week number 4 of our series that we began called All That Matters, kicking off 2019, and I'm so glad that you're with us here this morning, especially on this cold, snowy morning. I want to also look into the camera and welcome all those that aren't able to be with us but are going to watch this week on podcast. So had somebody stop me after first service earlier this morning and say, thank you so much that your services are online, because we've been sick. Our whole family's been sick over the last 2 weeks, but we've been with you. And we know that what you've been talking about has impacted our lives. So again, thank you so much for being here with us. So this series has been helping us to understand that often in life, we can make a lot of things out of things that don't really matter. And a lot of times it's stuff that we get so wrapped in and caught in that really don't have any impact or don't really matter in the big picture of life. And so we've been really talking about what matters as a church. And I have the opportunity at the beginning of this year to talk about who we are as a church and what we do and why we do it and why it matters in our life. And so maybe you're here trying to figure out whether Bridgewood is a good fit for you and your family, or you've recently joined with us and you're really trying to figure out, what does this church really focus on? What is it all about? Then this series hopefully has helped you to understand where our heart and our passion is, and I get an opportunity to deliver that. So on this last part of this series, I want to talk to you today about how we behave. So I want you to look at 3 or 4 people around you and say, we're going to talk about behavior, so you better be on your best behavior, all right? Tell 3 or 4 people. I need to say that to myself, probably more than anybody, but we're going to talk about what really matters. And let me just kind of catch you up to speed. Let me just summarize these last few weeks. We really began sharing with you really the heart and the vision of our church is that we want to be so close to Christ that we want everyone in the world to come to know Him. And we believe that the closer we get to Christ, the more He's going to be working in us and through us to a world that is lost and desperate and that needs Him. And so that is just really the heart of what we're all about in our vision. And then we spent a little bit of time talking about how do we get there? How do we do that together as a church? And we just shared with you, really, we believe there's a clear path as a church. We encourage everyone to take these 4 steps along this journey of really growing in experiences. And this weekend experience, you're here. So we pray that you're going to grow today and you're going to begin to know Jesus more, fall more in love with Him. And through these different experiences, it's going to really grow you. And then we want you to connect in groups. Groups are so important to life because you and I were never designed to do life by ourselves. So we want you to be part of a group. And then we said learning in steps is part of growing on our journey together. You know, people that stop growing are people that really stop living the life that God wants them to experience. And so we talk about what is your next step, and then we believe when you do those 3, it really prepares your life to go outside these 4 walls and live on mission to where people can see what really matters to you, that Jesus isn't just something that we talk about. He's not something that we wear as a banner, but it's something that we actually believe in and that we actually live out in our everyday life. So we kind of talked all about that, which really leads us to week number 4 today. And again, we're talking about making a difference in other people's lives. That's the ultimate purpose of life. Do you know that it doesn't really matter where you work or what you do? It doesn't matter where you attend school or college. What matters is that wherever you are, whatever you do, the ultimate purpose in life is that we would make a difference in this world. That we would be people that would make a difference in other people's lives. We're not just here for ourselves, but God has gifted you to make a difference in the world in which we live, and we're seeing that more and more. And actually, we learn that God has wired us in such a way that when we do that, when we make a difference in other people's lives, He pours joy into our lives. That's why you feel good when you do something for someone. And you get that feeling inside. That's not made up. That's something you're actually feeling, because actually they say, just physically and mentally and emotionally in our lives, when we do good, when we help others out, it pours joy directly into our lives. And so we've been kind of revolving around a verse in the New Testament that the Apostle Paul wrote to a young pastor who was pastoring a church, and he told Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 6, he told him, he said, you need to command your people. Tell your people not to focus on their riches, not the stuff that they have. I know they think that matters, but it really doesn't matter. It's really uncertain, and you can't put your trust in it. And then he says, here's what I want you to encourage them to do. Go out and do good things. Be rich in good deeds. Be generous and willing to share. We said really what rich means is rich isn't how much money you have in your bank account. Rich means that God has given you more than you need for yourself. I don't know about you, but I have more than I need for just me. So I'm rich in the eyes of God. There are people in the world that don't have anything compared to what you and I have. And so he says, go out and do good. Be willing to share. Pour your life into making a difference. Because he says, when you do that, 2 things are going to happen. Number 1, you're going to be laying up for yourself treasures in heaven. Meaning you're going to be investing in the place that really matters, which is eternity. Because your life here on earth is short compared to eternity. And then he says, number 2, you're actually going to learn to live a life that truly matters. He says, you'll grab a hold of life that's really true, the true life, a life that really matters. And so that's what we've been talking about and really just kind of revolving around. But today I want to talk about how we behave. Not just what our mission is and what our vision is and what our passions are, but I'm talking about how we do what we do. And in the world, they call that culture. I want to talk about developing a culture that matters. When I say culture, I'm talking about, let me define it for you. Culture is spontaneous, repeated behaviors. So culture means what people do, how they behave. And so you can look around and you can figure out the culture of something by the way that people behave, by the way that they act. So culture is everywhere. You have a culture in your home. You have a culture at your workplace. There's a culture here at Bridgewood Church. There's a culture at the restaurant that you may eat lunch at in just a few minutes. There's a culture everywhere you go, which means there are spontaneous behaviors that people do. And so, I don't know about you, but I had to learn this the hard way. Like I was one of those kids growing up where my parents taught me it's not just what you do, but it's how you do it that matters. And so I had a couple of chores that I just hated doing, like taking out the garbage. We had a really long driveway, and I come from a family of 8, so like we had a dumpster back there. Every week. There was garbage everywhere. And so you couldn't just do it in one trip. You had to go several trips and walk all the way down the driveway. As a kid, it was like the end of the world, right? And so it wasn't just that they wanted me to take out the garbage, but they wanted to tell me that how I do it matters. So when I would be like, fine, and then have a big hissy fit and do it, they would be watching the whole time. I got really good at getting about halfway down the driveway and learning how to take the bags and throw them the rest of the way. So I thought I was saving time, but most of the time the bags would hit the ground and then break open, and then you'd have a bigger mess. But it was all about the attitude behind it. It was all about the behavior. My parents would say, you got to stack the dishes. I still don't stack the dishes right to this day because I just cram them in there just to get done with it and just to do it. And they would say, no, you didn't do it with the right attitude. Take them all out and do it again. The ultimate worst of all was having 4 brothers. Now, we were often beating each other up and fighting. And then my parents would do this. They would get us together when we'd get in trouble, and they would say, I want you to say sorry to each other. How many of you know you can say sorry, and then you can say sorry the wrong way? So we'd just be like, sorry. And they say, no. I'd say, why? What? Usually when I do that, I would be like this. No. You're saying it, but your attitude's not right. And so they would make us stand face to face, eye to eye, until we would say sorry, and then we would hug each other. I can't tell you how long I stood looking at one of my brothers eye to eye because I wouldn't say sorry, they wouldn't say sorry, and so we would be in a standoff, and we would do it a few times, but they'd say, no, you didn't mean it. So you're going to stay there until you mean it. What were they doing? They were helping develop a culture in my life and in our home that I'm really thankful for today. Because what they said is, it's not just about what you do, but it's about how you do it that matters. And so you can have a great business, you can have a great church, you can have a great organization, but if the culture is bad, if the way people behave is bad, people are going to have a really bad experience. And so really, culture, our behavior is really made up of 2 things. Okay, if you want to change your home, I would be taking notes because this works in a home as much as it does at church. Culture is a combination of 2 things. Number 1, what we do. We've talked about that, what we do. And that can be intentional or unintentional. But whatever you're repeating, whatever you're doing is creating a culture, whether you know it or not. but it's also what we allow. So what you allow, it may not be what you want, but if you allow it, it's also creating a culture. So if there's things that are going on, what were my parents trying to help me to understand? Oh, we could let you do that, but if you do it with a bad attitude and you do it when you don't mean it, and when you do that, if we allow you to do that, then we're creating a culture that is not healthy and it's not right. And so we want you to do it the right way. And so over and over again, you begin to understand, wow, this really does matter, because here's why it matters, okay? Some of you are looking, why are we talking? Why does this matter? I'll tell you why. Values shape behaviors. So if you want to know why you act the way you do, then you need to take a look inside and say, what do I value? Because what you value is how you behave. If it's not a big deal to you to be on time, then you're probably always late. If it's not a big deal to you to talk back and to be verbally critical, then you probably do that. That's how you behave, or that may be how you allow things to be done. If you're the kind of person that commits to things and then doesn't follow through with them, then if you wonder why you behave that way, it's because you don't really value the commitment of your word. If you value the commitment of your word and you say something, then you're going to behave and follow through with it, because values shape behaviors. I know what happens a lot of times is we get this backwards and we try to focus on changing our behavior without changing what we value. And all that is behavior modification. And that doesn't work very good. And that takes a long time, and you go through a lot of painful things. So Jesus never was about behavior modification. Jesus would always go right to the heart, because out of the heart are the things that matter. He said, guard your heart, because out of your heart is the wellspring of life. Like everything that you believe, everything that you value is right here in your heart. So why do you think Jesus always zeroed in and focused on? Jesus wasn't really concerned about the behavior. He was more concerned about the heart, because the heart tells you why you behave or act the way that you behave. And if you've ever been part of a bad culture before, it's a horrible experience. And people don't grow and they don't thrive in places that have a bad culture. Maybe you've worked for one before. You've been in an environment where it stunned every bit of growth, and it was always negative, and it was always just about performance and the dollar rather than the people. If you've ever been a part of that, you know that it can be a very, very difficult experience. Have you ever gone to a restaurant that had a bad culture? Did you have a good experience? Now, I'm going to mention this place, but I'm not going to call it by name, because it's right here in the area. But I will say it does have golden arches, and I wasn't happy when I ate my meal, okay? And it has a culture, not anymore, because they actually did something about it, because a lot of people complain. And the culture was that if you pulled in that place, the drive-through was always 1,000,000 miles long, and it took forever to get through it. So people knew, I don't want to go there because it's going to take forever to get through that drive-through, and it's supposed to be fast food. Okay? Then if you went inside, there was a culture of there being so much garbage that when you would take your tray to go to the garbage bin and try to put it in there, the big mouth that opens that you put your stuff in, the garbage would be flowing out of it, so you wouldn't even know what to do with your tray. So people would leave their trays alone. And then it just had a culture of the people that were taking your order didn't want to take your order and weren't happy when they were taking your order. And so they just look at you, they wouldn't introduce themselves, they wouldn't say anything, they would just look angry and upset and whatever. And so recently they've rechanged everything. What did they do? They went in and they changed the culture and the behavior of everything that was going on, because it was such a bad experience for people. Now, you can think about that and then think about, how many of you have ever gone to a Chick-fil-A before? Okay, if you've ever eaten at a Chick-fil-A before, you'll know that when you pull in the Chick-fil-A, not only is the building beautiful, and clean. But the drive-through, even when it does get long, they send their workers out with little mobile pads to take your order so that it will speed the drive-through up. And then when you go inside, they're not looking at you like, what do you want? They come out and they give your kids balloons and crayons and coloring books, and they give you hugs, and they'll pray with you and all of that at the restaurant. And then they wonder why people have this amazing experience, because the way they behave and the way they act says what they value. Do you know, I went on the website and looked under both of these establishments. The first one, I couldn't find anywhere where it's posted what they value. I immediately Googled Chick-fil-A, and right away, Chick-fil-A values will pop right up. And there are 5 of them that are listed. 5 values that they have. I wrote them down so that it would describe to you the experience that you're going to get. Number 1, customers first. Number 2, a drive to continually be improving. Number 3, excellence. Number 4, working together. And number 5, stewardship. If you've ever eaten there, would that describe their behavior to you? Yeah. Because that's what they value. And what they value drives what they do. And so here's what we got to do. As followers of Jesus, we have to ask ourselves, not only are we doing the right things, but are we doing it the right way? Are we behaving and acting in a way because we're told to, or because we have to, or are we doing it because it's really a value of ours? And so Jesus tackled this in such an incredible yet very simple way. If you have your Bibles, Matthew chapter 7, I want you to look at this verse, Matthew chapter 7, because it's the gold standard. Your Bible may even say it's the golden rule. But Matthew chapter 7, I'll tell you what Jesus is dialing in on. He's dialing in on behavior. So Matthew chapter 7, Jesus says this: do to others what you would like them to do to you. So what is he saying? He's saying, I want you to behave or act in a way to others the way you want them to act towards you. And then he says this is the essence that is taught in the law and the prophets. What he's saying is this really summarizes a lot of the Bible. He says, if you want to know what matters, let me just boil it down to you. And he says, here's what matters. Treat people and behave in such a way that you want others to behave towards you. Now, let me just say this about this verse, okay? Because a lot of times people read this verse, and the motivation for them doing this verse is wrong. Jesus is not saying, do to others what you would have them to do to you. And if they do it back to you, then you keep doing it. Because how many of you know what Jesus says here doesn't happen most of the time? You say, Pastor, what are you talking about? Well, Matthew chapter 5, verses 11 and 12, this is in the same sermon that Jesus is teaching. In Matthew chapter 5, here's what Jesus says. God blesses you when people mock you and persecute you and lie about you and say all sorts of evil things against you because you are my followers. Be happy about it. Be very glad, for a great reward awaits you in heaven. You know what Jesus is saying? Jesus is saying, listen, I didn't tell you to do unto others as they would have you do back unto you as a sort of motivation, because even when people don't treat you back that way, he still wants us to act the right way. Everybody got it? And he says, you're probably not going to get your reward here on earth, but your reward is where? It's in heaven. It's in eternity. This is laying up for yourself treasures in heaven. What he's saying is you're probably going to do this, and people are going to treat you actually worse. But he says, you continue to do it. You continue to behave and act the right way, because it's not based on how others treat you. Now, you would like them to treat you that way. But he's saying, even if they don't, you have a reward in heaven. I want you to do what's right, but I also want you to do it the right way. I want you to do it with the right attitude. Often in the Gospels, Jesus would want us to take a step of obedience, but he would also say something like this: I want you to give because it's the right thing to do. I want you to be a giver. But he said, if you can't do it with the right attitude, you're better off not doing it at all. He says, if you can't give out of a cheerful heart, like if you're not excited when you give, then really, he says, you're better off not doing it because you're not getting anything out of it. Because why? Because your attitude and the way that you're doing it is not healthy. It's not good. It's not right. And not only that, but Jesus, how many of you know, he wants us to model the right kind of behavior? He wants us to model culture to the world around us. You know that the world is looking at the church to be a model. The problem is often they don't see the right model, or they don't see a good model, or they don't see us modeling for the right motivations and the right reasons. But trust me, the world's eyes are on the church, and they're looking, going, how are they going to behave? How are they going to behave when things are good? How are they going to behave when someone lies about them? How are they going to behave when something's taken from them or something unjust is done? And they're looking for a model that they can follow. And throughout the Gospels and throughout the New Testament, Jesus kept repeating this theme that you and I are to model culture to the world around us. You're to model the right behavior. You're to model the right motivation for us doing what Jesus tells us to do. He says, I want you to go out and model it. And Jesus started with himself first. He said, I'm going to be an example. So he's with his disciples in John chapter 13. And one of the customs in those ancient days, because they traveled on dusty roads and in desert region and area, and they wore sandals, their feet would get dirty. It was a custom, much like you and I would wash our hands before we ate dinner. They would not only wash their hands, but they would wash their feet because they would lounge around at tables while they were eating. And so notice what Jesus says. Jesus says, I want to model not only what to do, but I want to model how to do it because that's important. And so here's Jesus. He says, now that I, the Lord, the teacher, the master, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. And then notice what he said. I have set you an example. Jesus was saying, I'm going to be the model, and I'm not only going to show you what to do, but I'm going to show you how to do it. You say, well, how is he doing it? Well, number one, if you were the rabbi, you were the master, you were the one that was in charge, you were not the one that would be washing people's feet. Do you see what Jesus is saying? He's saying, not only is it the right thing to do, but I'm not too good and I'm not too prideful to actually model for you that serving others is not only good and right, but it creates the right kind of example for others to follow. Listen, nobody likes to be around somebody that tells them to do something and then does the opposite, do they? No. But we've all done that before, haven't we? Is that a yes? Or okay. Like we've all done that, right? We've all said, do this, and then done the opposite of it. And we know that puts a real bad taste in our mouth. It puts a real downer on your spirit when you hear that. And so Jesus knew that, and Jesus said, listen, to my followers, I want you to know that I'm not better than you are. I'm not, even though I'm your master, I'm setting an example because I want to model the right kind of behavior. Jesus is not the only one that did this, but Timothy, who we've been talking about over these last few weeks, that was a pastor of a church. Here's what the Apostle Paul told Timothy as he was pastoring the church in verse number 12. He said, Timothy, don't let anyone think less of you because you're young. Timothy was a young guy. He was pastoring, had a lot of responsibility, but he was young. He said, be an example. Be the model to all the believers in what you say, in the way that you live, in your love, in your faith, in your purity. What is he saying? By all the ways that you behave, all the ways that you act, Timothy, I want you to be the model. And I want you to demonstrate not only what to do, but how to do it so that others will follow. Titus, I told you, pastored a multifaceted church. He pastored churches all over the island of Crete. Here's what the Apostle Paul told Pastor Titus. He said, Pastor Titus, you yourself must be an example. You got to put yourself out there. You got to be the model to them by doing good works of every kind. Watch this. Let everything you do reflect the integrity and seriousness of your teaching. He said, Timothy, don't get up there and teach and preach something that you're not willing to be the example to model for everyone else to follow. So you get out there and do acts of kindness. You get out there and be part of a group. You get out there and put yourself out there and volunteer and serve others and feed others that are hungry and go out and spread the good news in the region and in the community so people will come to know. You do it so that you can model not only what to do, but how to do it. And so all through the scriptures, you will see that even the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 11 and verse 1 says, listen, you can follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. Think about those words. Think about you putting your name there. Could you look at someone today and say, follow me and do everything that I do and do it the way that I do it? Because that will take you closer to Christ. That will make you a better follower of Jesus. Think about that. Now, the reality is, people are looking to you as the example and the model, whether we understand that or not, especially if you're a parent here today and you're raising kids. We're an example and a model to them, whether you choose to. Remember, culture is what you do, and it's also what you allow. And so that's a model of something. That's modeling and creating culture somewhere. In them, in your home, in your workplace, in our church. It's not just that we do the right things, Bridgewood. What matters is definitely obedience. We have to do the right things. But we also have to do it in the right way, with the right attitude. It has to be something that really comes from what we value inside. That what we do actually matters to us, and it's important to us, because if it's not a value, it will never become a behavior. And so I love God because I value my relationship with God. So it's not a chore to show up here. It's not a chore to pray for 21 days like we've been praying and fasting, because I value the relationship that I have with God. I value how good God has been to me. How gracious He's been to me. How kind He's been to me. I'm so thankful that He says in His Word, if you get close to me, I'll get close to you. And that He's with us everywhere in life. I had an experience happen this past week. I told the first service, I have 9 lives, probably like a cat that you just can't get rid of. Not that you should be getting rid of it, but God has just been with me through some very, very difficult things in life that could have really took my life. I've shared a few of them with you, and I've even said that He has sent at times ministering spirits, angels, that's what they are, to protect me at times. I've shared some of those stories. The staff laughs because I can't make this stuff up. I make stuff up sometimes, but I'm not making this stuff up. So they've nicknamed my guardian angel Clarence. So if I ever refer to Clarence, I'm speaking about that ministering angel that the Lord sent me. So we were driving on 75 this past week, headed up to a conference in Traverse City, and Pastor Darren and Pastor Wendy, they were with us in the truck, and I'm driving on 75, and we're going about 70, 75. I don't know, that's where the details get a little fuzzy, but we were on the freeway, and all of a sudden, I totally lose all power in my automobile. Now, Doug and a couple others here that have brilliant minds like that and can figure out cars. I've never been driving and all of a sudden had a major electrical outage where everything just stopped. And so I just tried as best I can, because I had no steering or anything. I tried to get over to the side of the road. And literally Thankfully, by God's grace, we got to the side of the road without hitting anything or being in trouble. And I literally pulled the truck over and I shut the key off. And I'm just looking, going, I don't know what happened. I turned the key back on. And boom, the truck starts right back up. All power, all gauges, everything looks normal. We sat there for about 30 to 60 seconds going, should we go back or should we go forward? I said, I have no idea what happened. I have no idea. So we said, you know what? We're already into the trip. Let's just go. I pulled back on the 75. Now, we were there for 2 minutes. I pulled back on 75, got back in the lane I was, and right in front of us, a major 5-car accident, boom, just happens. And we come rolling up on it. It was 30 to 60 seconds. The smoke was still blown out of 5 cars in a wreck in our lane that we were in. And I haven't had a problem with that truck the rest of the week. Okay, now, I'm not here to talk to you about clearance or about any of those things. What I am here is saying that when Jesus changes your life, when Jesus protects you, when Jesus heals you, when Jesus forgives you, when Jesus does things in your life, I value it because I know how good he is. And I know that when he's close, he's close. And I know and I'm thankful for his presence in my life. But that comes out of what I value. And it drives what I do. And so together as a church, we said, you know what? We can have a great vision. We can have a great mission. And we can get really focused in 2019, but if we don't do things the right way, with the right attitude, then it really doesn't matter. So for over a year, with our team and our staff, we just sat down and we said, what things do we value? As we're following Jesus, as we're trusting him, as we're doing all the things that we do as a church, as we're full of the Holy Spirit, what are the kind of attitudes that we want to model and that we want to define the culture of our church? And there's so many of them that we just kept narrowing down. Which ones really matter? We landed on 7 values that we really want to define the culture of what we do here and why we do it. And so I want to just real quickly share these with you over the next couple of weeks and months and into this year. Not only will you begin to visibly see them around, but you'll begin to see them work through every facet of our church. And I'm serious enough about this that we've even talked about as a team that our teammates are gonna have opportunities to celebrate and reward when they see these values done amongst the teams that we have here at Bridgewood. I want each of them, or I want our team to constantly be carrying away. I love Chick-fil-A cards. When they see behaviors that are done that are models of the things that we really value, to be able to just stop and to be able just to say, you know, let's just celebrate. This is not only the right thing to do, but this is the right way to do it. And this is what matters to us. And so if you see that or you get one of those, don't freak out or anything like that, because we want to celebrate what we value. So what do we value? Number 1, we value being real. And there's a question here to ask you. Is this what you really value? The question is am I really honest or transparent? We want to create a culture where people are real and authentic. This isn't a place where you show up and you act like somebody that you're really not. And when the Holy Spirit's dealing with you, you don't sit there and try to blame it on someone else, but you kind of look at yourself and say, man, if I'm honest, if I'm transparent, that's me. And you're okay and you're willing to say, God, I need to do that, or I need to respond, or I need to change, or I need to get this right. Because we're real. Number 2 is we want to keep growing. We want the attitude of everything we do to be, I don't know it all, I don't have it all figured out, and I'm definitely not done on my journey with Jesus, that there's another step that I need to take. There's another another experience I need to go through that I can learn. There's more to my relationship with Jesus that I need to get my arms around. And so we just want it to be always that you can look around and you can ask somebody, how are you moving forward? What is your next step? Where are you going next? So that we can encourage one another. Not just that, but we want to live open-handedly. We want to be the kind of church that says, what do we have in our possession, in our hands, in our resources that someone else needs? And if they need it, we want to give it to them. We want to be willing to share. We want to be the church that doesn't have to do it because it looks good. We want to do it because we value living open-handedly, because God has so graciously and generously blessed us. Church, that's why I said, this isn't our church, it's not our stuff. And when there's needs, I just feel like as a church, we need to step up and we just need to live open-handedly. We need to do as much as we can to say, listen, if you need it, here, we're willing to share it with you. But not only that, but also to take risks. I want to be around people that are constantly willing to do more than talk about faith, but to actually live faith. I'm tired of being around people that everything's so safe, everything's so comfortable. They got to figure it all out. They got to have it all lined up in order for them to do it, rather than to trust God. When I read through my Bible, all I read is people that didn't know what they were doing, where they were going, how it was going to work, what the end result was going to be, but trusted God. And I said, God, what kind of behavior do I want to model and do I want to be a part of? It's one where people are willing to step out in faith and take risks. And say, God, if you're telling me to do it, if you want me to do it, then I'm going to do it. And I'm going to trust you all the way. Not only that, but we want to own it as well. We live in a culture that wants to blame everybody and everything. They don't want to take personal responsibility for anything. It's not my fault. It's because of this. It's because of that. If I just had this, if I just did that. Rather than owning it, it's not someone else's problem. It's not somebody else's responsibility. It's our responsibility. So we're not going to look around with blinded eyes and say, you know what, it's that, it's this, it's that. No, we'll own it. And we'll own it. We'll take responsibility for it. We'll make things right. I had an amazing opportunity to pray with a gentleman right after first service. He said, you know what, I've made some mistakes and it's cost me, I'm on suspension in my job. And he said, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what the outcome's going to be, but I know I made the wrong steps. I've done everything to try to make the steps right, but I don't know what the outcome's going to be. But he said, you know what, I need to own this. This is mine. This wasn't anybody's fault but my own. I stopped with him right there and not only prayed with him, but I said, listen, you are doing what we just talked about. Because it would be easy to say it's this and it's that, and if I'd have had this or I'd have done that. No. Own it. And when your heart is right and when you are humble and broken and transparent between God, transparent enough and honest to say, God, that's where God can do some of his best work. I looked at him and I just said, you know what? I've learned more in my failure than I ever learned through my success. When you have the right attitude, when you do it the right way, it can be a catapult to something great in your life. And so I said, let's just get this right. That's what I'm talking about. And lastly, two more, is to stick together and to just be in this thing together. You know, one of the things that destroys churches more than anything is disunity, criticism, complaining, grumbling. You can see anywhere where God's people joined together in a force and there was disunity or criticism or grumbling or complaining, it was a long journey, the hard way, with little result. But listen, we don't have to agree on everything. We don't have to see eye to eye on everything. We don't have to have the same output. But what we do need to have is unity. What we do need to have is people that are willing to come together and say, we can disagree agreeably, but unity matters, and it's something that the world is looking for. And lastly, we're going to love everyone. We're not just going to love people that look like us and talk like us and believe like us. We're going to love everyone because Jesus loved everyone. He didn't always love everything they did, but he loved them. And he loved them enough and was patient enough to watch the transformation and the change of their heart. It's easy for us to just love certain kinds of people. But we want to model what it means to love first. To love like Jesus loves. So these 7 things are what we value. These 7, there's a lot of them, but if we just narrowed it down and you want to know what really matters, what do we want to drive the things that we do? This is what we want. This is what we have prayed for, and this is what we're going to celebrate together as a church. This is what we're going to work hard to do and to get this right in this because we know it will make a difference. So stand with me, would you? The band's going to come and join me here on the stage. And I just said, you know what? God, help us. Help us to understand it's not just what we do, but it's how we do it. Maybe you're thinking about your home right now and you say, you know what? I need to change some things in our home. Well, you change behaviors by changing what you value, what really matters in life. And so that's why all that matters matters. That's why focusing on the right things that matter have incredible value, because it's really shaping the things that we do, the way that we act. And so if we get this right, if we can focus on what's right and do what is right, then it's going to not only matter for this life, but matter for the life to come in eternity. So here's what my prayer is. At the end of this 21 days to celebrate together. It's been 21 days. It's just been amazing seeing just God move in our midst. And I just said, I want to have one last rally prayer together after these 21 days to say, God, not only do we surrender our lives to you, but we want to focus on all that matters this year. As a church, as individuals, we want to get this right. And so we want you to do that work in our hearts. So I just asked the band, would you guys just sing for just a moment and allow us just to ask people to come, to just fill in. I just want us all to be together on this closing day of this series and this 21 days. And I want us to start this year in unity with each other, just thanking God that He's the center of it all, but that these values would matter to us. So as they begin to sing, would you just step out? Would you come? I know there's a lot of you packed in here today, but I want you just to get as close as you can. And I'm going to lead us in prayer. Come right now, would you, as they sing. This is what we can build our life on. Okay, what matters you can build your life on. And so here's the deal. For several weeks now, we've been helping talk about what we need to do. Pete, I'm going to have you throw that back up there. There's action steps that we need to take. Because here's the deal. If we do a series like this for a few weeks and we just talk about this, but it never results in action, then really the question is, does it really matter? Does it really matter? What matters is when what we hear and what God does in us moves us to action. So we've been talking about there's so many things to take action steps on for today. Whether it's experiences or groups or steps or mission, they're all listed there. We've been sharing with you over and over again. Now, this isn't just what we do. It's what we believe gets us to a place where if we're doing these things and we're doing them with the attitudes that we just talked about and that we're going to continue to do, that it will move us closer to Christ. And when He is close to us and when He's moving in our lives, He'll be in us and through us. And so that wherever we go in the world, people are going to say, man, there's something different. Something's going on with that person. I can see Jesus in that person. Not only that, but we begin to just testify everywhere we go that He's really what matters. And we live to make a difference in the lives of others. We just believe that's going to get us there. And so here's what we've done. I pulled our team together. We just sat on the floor in the office and just strategized for a few minutes. I said, this has got to move us to action. And not just some, all of us. So we've had an amazing response already. And so out in the gallery area, we moved out some stuff, and there's a team in there. They're waiting for you to take whatever action step that's here that you need to take, okay? And so they've got they're logged into our app, into our sign-ins and all of that, so they'll get you signed up. They'll give you details. They'll buy your Immerse book if you haven't done that, because we want to just pour ourselves into the scriptures this year. We've got some amazing growth classes that we're super excited about, Roots and Starting Point, that are just amazing classes that we need to take every year, but just keep doing. And then Why I Believe is going to be a great class. You need to know why you believe what you believe. And there are people that need to get water baptized yet, that you just holding off, going, is that experience really going to change me? Yes, it will. Yes, it will. And being able to say, God, help us to live on mission. Man, so many of you have poured in to wrap love around our girls and boys home at House of Providence. I was with the directors, and they were just, they looked at me and they said, never in our history have we had so many volunteers from one church just wrap around us. And they just said, we are just in awe. This has been an answer to our prayers. And I just said to myself, that's what living on mission means. We do more than talk about it, but it moves us to action. So when I get done praying here, we're going to do two things, okay? We're going to walk out, and whatever action you need to take, I want you to pour into there, let them help you, and get started. Let's move towards that. And then two, we're going to go find whatever buffets are open, okay? Whatever buffets are all you can eat today, hit it hard. Let's celebrate together these amazing 21 days of putting God first, detaching ourselves from the world, and saying, God, our trust is in you. Okay, you ready? If you want to, join with me. Lift your hands once again in total surrender. God, this is not my life, it's your life. God, I give my life fully to you. And God, we give you this year, 2019. God, we give you our hearts, because that's what we value. That's what matters to us, are the things that are in our heart. So we offer you our heart right now to change and to transform and to make new, so that our heart beats with your heart. Our heart values what you value. Our heart moves in compassion towards what moves your heart. And so God, whatever change you need to do in us, do it now. Do it now in us, so that we can live as followers of Jesus everywhere we go, sharing the amazing generosity and love that God showed us. And so, Father, I'm believing that when we get outside these four walls, we're going to make a difference, not only in this community, but everywhere we go, because we love you, Jesus, and we want everyone to know you. And so we give you our lives right now. Sing it one more time. I'm going to build my life on all that matters. Give it to him today.